to my familia homeschool. My name is Marissa and I live in Miami, Florida with my husband William and my two daughters Abby and Ellie. We are a family that has chosen homeschool as the way that we've decided to educate our girls. And on this channel I love talking about our homeschool journey, different tips, tricks, curriculum. However, today we're gonna change it up a little bit. As I've mentioned in previous videos, we have another little one on the way that will arrive in October. And so today I want to talk a little bit about birth, natural childbirth, home birth, and kind of our journey with that. So let's start from the beginning. Abby is my oldest. She's 5. She'll be 6 in November. And so when I first became pregnant with her, I was about 22. I didn't really know anything about natural childbirth. I didn't really know anything about home birth. And so I was just planning on doing things the way that most people do it, the way you normally hear, going to the hospital, going to an OB, getting my checkups, all that stuff. And I did start doing that. I went to the OB, I got my first checkups, and during this time I was working at a preschool. I was a pre-K teacher. And when I told my co-teacher that I was pregnant, she was super excited, and she started talking to me about her family's experience with home birth. We were living in Oklahoma at the time, and so she told me about this midwife that had been a part of her birth when she was born, and she was now obviously an adult because she was my co-teacher. And then her sister, her older sister, had already had children. She wasn't a mother yet, but her older sister was. And so this midwife was also part of her older sister's birth, and she gave me some resources to check out, some information, some documentaries to look at. And it really piqued my interest. This was nothing that I had ever even thought about before. And so I started to investigate. I started to look into it more. I started to watch the documentaries. I think one of them was called The Business of Being Born or something like that. And so I watched that documentary and kind of heard about some of the interventions that are super common within hospitals. Started hearing about how natural birth is. Started hearing about how peaceful this process can be. And as I read and heard more and more, I started to become convinced. My husband, as I've also mentioned before, is a mathematician, and so we also looked at the numbers. And at that time, like I said, I was working for a preschool, and this preschool was actually part of a nonprofit. We had pretty good benefits, so I had health insurance through my job. And with this health insurance, like most health insurance, we would have to pay a deductible. We figured out the numbers, and the deductible we would have had to pay for a hospital birth was about the same that we would have to pay out of pocket to have birth with this midwife at this birthing center. And so we decided to check it out. We went in for our first appointment. I went with my husband, and it was kind of like an interview. She told us about it. She talked to us about it. We were obviously first-time parents, so we had a lot of questions. And we just connected right away. Our midwife's name was Ruth, and she just made us feel really comfortable. And so we started the process. And kind of how it worked with us, they had a birthing center where we would go for our prenatal appointments. And so it was really set up like a house. There were bedrooms. Where you would do kind of like your checkup. So they would take your weight, blood pressure, all that kind of normal prenatal stuff. And then you'd check in with the midwife. She'd talk to you about how everything was going, ask you questions, pretty much the same thing that happens at a doctor's office with an OB. So we went through our whole pregnancy this way. I felt so comfortable in this environment. And when it came to the end of the process, we kind of had to come to a decision. Do we want to have this baby at the birthing center, or do we want to have her at home? In this situation, it was cheaper to have her at home than it was at the birthing center. There was an additional cost to use the birthing center for that purpose, so we decided to have her at home. Now, Abby was born in November. She was born right around Thanksgiving. And so I had told her, baby, you're gonna come, I think it was like November 17th or something. I wanted her to come about a week early so that I would have about a week with her, and then everyone was gonna come to our house for Thanksgiving, so they'd all come, they'd meet the baby, but I'd have some time to get adjusted. That was my plan. Well, the 17th came, I took off work for that week, and baby was just not coming. She was supposed to come the weekend. She didn't come over the weekend. I was so devastated. Obviously, it's my first pregnancy. Sometimes they take a little bit longer. So I was so devastated. I call my mom. I'm like, I don't know why this baby isn't coming out of me. So she actually comes and stays with me for that week. We try all the things to try to get labor started. All the things except castor oil, because thankfully I called the midwife first, and she was like, don't do that. If your body isn't ready to go into labor, you're just gonna get a really bad stomach ache. But we tried spicy food, we tried walking. I don't know how many squats, but baby was not coming out. All of my family, grandparents, parents came for Thanksgiving. There was no baby. We went out, hopefully I was going to go into labor. During those days they were here, no baby. I was so frustrated. So that was the week of Thanksgiving. Thankfully, I was off work for most of that time, so it wasn't like I had to take a lot of PTO. But that Monday, I'm like, well, if this baby's not coming, I'm just gonna go back to work. I'm so over it. By this time, I was already past my due date, so I go back to work on that Monday. Tuesday, I had an appointment with my midwife. She said, if by the end of this week, baby doesn't come, call me and we'll talk about getting you a cocktail that has castor oil in it to help you go into labor. So Tuesday after the appointment, I go to the gym because I went to the gym up until the end of my pregnancy. I went to the gym. There were a couple stretches she told me to try. And so I remember crawling around on the rug in the middle of the living room and not really thinking it would work. Well, it worked. That morning I went into labor the Wednesday after that Tuesday appointment. I went into labor that morning probably around 5, 6 a.m. I called the midwife. She was like, okay, keep me posted. She wasn't in a big hurry. And so I took a shower and things just kind of got started. Both of my labors have been back labors. And with that first labor, it really kind of freaked me out. And so I sat on the couch the whole entire day. And I learned a lot from this process because I think that's what made the labor go so long. Here in a minute, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about my second labor, and things changed a whole lot. So I sat on the couch all day. Labor progressed very slow. The midwife came over at about 10:30. She was there the rest of the day. And Abby was born at 6 p.m. Abby was born exactly 1 week past her due date. And one thing I tell a lot of moms is probably if I had had a hospital birth, I would have been induced. Now, during that time when I was so ready for baby to get out, I kind of wanted to be induced. But I've also heard so many stories about how painful Pitocin is, how you end up usually getting an epidural, how it can cause the baby distress and cause a lot of extra unnecessary intervention. So knowing all these things, I was really thankful to have chosen natural childbirth, home birth. Now, a little over a year and a half later, I became pregnant with Ellie. I found out that I was pregnant a week before we decided that we would be moving to Miami, Florida from Oklahoma. So that was crazy in and of itself. So we decide we're going to move, we get everything packed up, and in October we move to Miami. When we move here, I have no idea. I have no idea where to go. This is the first time I've ever been in Florida. And so someone from our church hooks us up with a doctor's office. And the whole experience was pretty crazy. We were told that we didn't need an appointment, and it ended up waiting at this doctor's office for like 3 hours with my almost 2-year-old. It was insane. So I go to about 2 appointments at this doctor's office. The second one, I actually had an appointment, and it still lasted about 2 hours, most of that waiting in the waiting room, because we all know those prenatal appointments are super short. Because we had just recently moved to Florida and we both moved without a job, we were unemployed, I was able to get Medicaid. And having Medicaid, I assumed we would have to have a hospital birth. And I was okay with that. It being my second birth, I kind of knew what to do. I knew what I was going into, and I felt better prepared to advocate for myself. But after this crazy experience with these doctor's office, with this taking such a long time with each appointment, I was like, something's gotta give. I've got to figure something out. And so I started looking for a different OB, a different doctor's office, somewhere else that we could go. And I fell upon the information that Florida Medicaid covers midwives. I was so excited. I was so excited to find out that I would be able to have a similar experience with my second childbirth as I did with the first. And so I looked around, sent out some emails, and figured out a place where we would like to check out, a place we would like to go to check out to see if this was the right place for us to have my second daughter, Ellie. And so we go there, we have our first appointment, we talk to the midwife. This place is a little different. It's a birthing center just like the previous place, but instead of only one midwife, they actually had several, like 4 or 5. It was a house like the previous place with different rooms, 1 set up for prenatal checkups and 2 set up for birthing. And so it was kind of the same process. We went, we walked in, we talked to the people, we felt comfortable. This was the place to have Ellie. And so we go through the whole prenatal process us, go to all the appointments. We're nearing the end of the pregnancy, and I'm thinking, okay, this is my second pregnancy. They always say sometimes they come faster. Hopefully I'll have her. So by 38 weeks, I'm ready to have this baby. I'm walking miles and miles every day. Also, she was born in the middle of COVID. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. There wasn't really anywhere to go. The beaches were closed, the parks were closed. And so Abby, my oldest, and I would go out in the stroller every single day and walk for hours. Well, Ellie still decided that she was too comfortable in there and she didn't want to come until after her due date. Thankfully, it wasn't a whole week like Abby. So Ellie's due date came around and a couple days passed, and finally that Saturday I said enough is enough. So I started watching YouTube videos about ways that I could go into labor, and one video that I found talked about these different stretches. They were similar to what my midwife had told me to do in Oklahoma, but there were some additional ones, and it was so cool. As I started doing these stretches, I put on some really peaceful music because they said being in that peaceful state really helps your body to feel comfortable and safe to go into labor. And as I start doing these stretches, I literally feel Ellie drop into place and I feel my water break. I didn't know at the time that my water was breaking. I kind of thought maybe I had peed myself because sometimes that happens in pregnancy. But no, it was literally my water breaking because it continued to happen. And the next day when I saw the midwife, my water was completely gone. And so I do these stretches. Nothing really happens. I did feel her drop, but it wasn't immediate. That was in the afternoon on that Saturday. I go to bed and I wake up at about 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm in labor. And so I go downstairs, I lay on the couch, I kind of start timing the contractions. I think I was watching some YouTube videos. Everything was pretty calm. At about 6 o'clock, I wake up my husband. I let him know, hey, I'm in labor. We need to start getting ready. But everything was still pretty chill. I get up, I get dressed, I take a shower, I get my daughter up, I give her a shower. Now with this pregnancy, with this childbirth experience, and with this birthing center, it was actually an extra cost to have the baby at our home. So it made more sense for us to have her at the birthing center. We also had a roommate at the time living in the downstairs part of our house, a friend of ours from church. And so it would have been kind of weird to go through the whole birthing process while he was at our home. But like I said, I get up, I take a shower, I get my daughter up, I give her a shower. My husband gets ready, we get in the car, we drive Abby and drop her off at a really close friend's house who had said that they would keep her for the day. And we were still not in a rush. When I got in the car, I did start feeling some pain. And when we dropped Abby off, I did have to get out of the car and stand up because I did feel the pain moving into my back like last time, that back labor. But we still weren't in a big rush. We drop Abby off, then we go and grab something to eat because the midwives had encouraged us to pick something up to eat as a meal after I had the baby. So we grab some food and we drive to the birthing center. We get there a little bit before 9 o'clock. The midwife checks me. I was about 7 centimeters dilated, so we were pretty far along. She asked me where I wanted to go to kind of keep going through the birthing process. They have this really cute patio, so I decided to go out there. So we go outside. After Abby's labor, I had learned that I wasn't going to stay still. So through every contraction, I would get down into a low squat, and we are Christians. We believe that God is part of everything that we do. And so through every contraction, I was praying, and it was amazing. It was an amazing birthing experience. Within about half an hour, I started feeling like things were starting to change. We go back inside, I lay down, and Ellie was out. Like I said, we arrived at the birthing center a little bit before 9 o'clock, and before 10, within less than an hour, she was born. It was amazing. I was so glad to have had such a quick birthing experience. And so this has kind of been our experience with natural childbirth. I've loved the whole experience, and I've seen it be super positive for my body, for my girls' bodies, and for our family as a whole. Something else that has been super beneficial for me throughout my process of having babies has been the concept of not only natural childbirth, but supernatural childbirth. As I mentioned in our story, we are Christians. We believe that God is a part of everything that we do, and we believe that God has a plan for childbirth just like he does for everything else. And that is something that I want to talk more about in our video next week. So if you enjoyed this video, if you want to hear more about our supernatural childbirth story, I would love for you to subscribe, give us a thumbs up so you can join us next week with My Familia Homeschool.